Hey everybody, welcome back to Greg's Carport. We're here, it's a Sunday afternoon in Central California. Fall is in the air, but it's not quite here yet. It's still pretty warm. You'll probably notice there's a little bit of an orange glow, but that's because we still have a lot of fires burning here in California, so we kind of have an orange tint to our sky. This is going to be part 3 of the Ranchero saga that we've been recording. We've already done part 1 and part 2. I encourage you to go ahead and check those out. Part 1 just goes into a little detail about the car. Part 2, we check out the interior of the car to see what little treasures we found, if any. And part 3, I promised you guys the last time, I promised you that we're going to go ahead and get this thing running today. We're going to try to take it for a little bit of a drive here out on the street. I just can't take it too far because, of course, it's an old car. The gas gauge doesn't work, so I'm not exactly sure how much gas is in it. So we're going to have to be kind of stingy when it comes to how far we're going to drive it from home. This car had sat for about 10 years before we picked it up, so it hasn't run a whole lot in the last 10 years. It's been sitting here for 2 months, and the car came here on a flatbed tow truck. So we actually haven't had it running since it's been sitting here. So today we're going to give that a shot. And here in a second, I'm going to go ahead and open up the hood on this old girl, and we'll go ahead and take a look at the engine and see what we got. So what we got here is a Ranchero that came with a 302 engine in it. As I told you in one of the other videos, a lot of these came with the 351 Clevelands. This one is a Ranchero 500, which means it was kind of the base model of the Rancheros. And so this one came with the 302. This is not the original engine that came with this car. When we put the new starter in, the car had some work done to it up in the Bay Area before it came down here. And when they put the new starter in it, we noticed that the block code on the side told us that this 302 is from 1974. So who knows what kind of car it came out of. I'm not really that concerned about it. This is not going to be a museum quality car. This is just going to be a car we're going to have fun with. It's going to be a driver, and if it gets scratched, it gets scratched. We're not going to worry about it. But before it came down here, I can point out some of the stuff that was done to the car before it came here. It has a new starter solenoid that you can see there on the fender. It does have new valve cover gaskets because they were leaking. We have new spark plug wires, a new cap and rotor. Carburetor has been rebuilt, although it probably actually needs to be replaced. I told you we had a new starter put in it. It has new freeze plugs. It has new spark plugs. It has new motor mounts. And so a good amount of work has been done to it since we got it down here. Now, one thing you can notice on the car that I really appreciate is back in 1972, a lot of luxury cars came with air conditioning. But back in 1972, air conditioning was something that was an option on a car. It's not like it is today where that was kind of a standard thing. Back in 1972, you had to special order your car with air conditioning. This Ranchero, lucky enough, does have air conditioning on it. You can see by this big box here on the firewall. So that's part of the air conditioning system. We have the condenser up here in front. We have some equipment here. The compressor would have sat right here on the engine. The compressor is gone, but it seems like everything else is here, which is a good thing. So hopefully if we can get a compressor and then we can get some hoses and hook all this equipment back up, hopefully we can then have air conditioning back in the car eventually. Because here in Central California in the summer times, it gets hot. And you really have to have a car with air conditioning, even these old classic cars. Now, it's true that you could say, well, don't drive it when it's hot, but it's always hot here. So that was a great thing that came with this car, and eventually, hopefully, we can get it hooked up. I told you earlier, the C4 transmission is leaking out the side. I do have a fuel, down here I have a fuel filter, a clear one in line. And so I can see that we have fuel down there, and it has a new fuel pump as well. The car did have the gas tank cleaned out, or flushed out, I should say. So the fuel that's in the car is new. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and see if we can get this thing started. you guys, but I'm pretty impressed. This thing hasn't started for about 2.5 months. When it came down here on the back of the tow truck, the flatbed just backed it in here and just rolled it off into the spot it's currently setting in. So I'm actually pretty impressed that it fired up the way that it did. And it's idling fairly good. I can tell that there's a miss. I can hear it. And I can smell it's running rich. I can already smell that coming off the back. But you know, part of that problem with cars running rich is back in the day, these cars kind of smelled like that all the time. It's just with new cars these days, we don't realize what the old classics used to smell like. Because the new cars are so efficient with that stuff, you don't really have any exhaust coming out, or exhaust smell. But it seems like it's running fairly well. Again, I'm pretty impressed that she started up the way she did. So I think what we'll do now is I think we'll just go ahead and we'll get inside. Let's make sure we got brakes, and let's make sure she'll go into gear. And if she'll go into gear and if we got brakes, let's take it for a little drive. Okay, so I'm back inside the Ranchero right now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to give the brake a couple of pumps and to see if I can feel some pressure, and I do. Now this does have power brakes. It has discs in the front and drums in the rear, which is pretty typical of cars in 1972. Now what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll put the transmission into drive, and let's see if we have it click into drive and see if she'll move. We just heard the idle go down a little bit, so we know the transmission engaged, and she moves. So let's take it for a drive. All right, so let's give this thing a try. We've got our fire extinguisher in here just in case we have any issues. Like I told you before, anyone who has a classic car should have a fire extinguisher. So let's put it in drive. I do have some ATF and a funnel in the back of the bed here, and that'll, in case we get out here and the transmission decides it doesn't have enough fluid. So let's go. This car, I've always liked is the way the hood scoop looks on these hoods. I love the bulge that it gives the hood. It just looks nice. All right, let's see if we can get this old girl to turn around. Head back up to the homestead. Actually drives pretty nice, pretty smooth. There's a lot of rattles, but there's actually a lot of stuff in the back of the truck, so that's some of the rattles that you're hearing is that. But the engine itself is strong. Hey, it moves and it stops. I think we're off to a great start with this one. It definitely needs work, but we've said that all along. I can hear some noise in the engine. I'm not sure where that's coming from. You can tell by the way the car is running that it's got a miss to it. But you have to remember, this car pretty much sat in front of the last owner's house for about 10 years. So this moving around of the car just the way it is, this is pretty much as it's driven in 10 years, which I think is actually pretty impressive. Again, the brakes are soft. The brakes are going to need some work. We got to do something about getting this engine running better. The engine itself seems strong. It just needs a little bit of TLC. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and get this thing parked before I run it out of gas. And we'll go ahead and do a little summary of what happened today, and maybe I can tell you some other things about the car real quick. So there we have it. We got it running. Surprisingly, very easy to get it running, and we got it moving. So I'm pretty impressed with this old girl. What she's been through and as much time as she sat, I think she ran actually fairly well. Again, this is a project car. That's what this always started out to be. I knew that I wasn't buying something that just came straight out of a museum. I knew it was something that we were going to have to work on. That was the whole idea of getting it. To me, sometimes half the fun of doing it is actually doing it yourself and trying to figure out the problems and getting them fixed. The 302 that's in here is good enough. I mean, it sounds like it's fine. It makes a little noise under load, so we'll have to look into that. But the transmission itself seemed to shift okay. And like I said, I'm actually pretty impressed with what we've got here so far. So I hope you enjoyed part 3. If you haven't seen part 2 or part 1, I encourage you to go check them out. I'd also encourage you to please subscribe to the channel so we can get our subscriber numbers up. And if you want to, go ahead and hit the bell, and then when we put the next video up, you'll be notified that the next one's up for part 4. I'm not sure what we're going to do for part 4 yet. What I'm leaning towards right now will be to get the seat out of it and get the carpet and stuff out of it so we can actually see the floor pans, because I know they're going to need some work. And with that, we'll leave it at that for now. And I'm glad you all tuned in today. Thanks again for watching, and we'll all see you next time.